We are at a pivotal time. Things are changing drastically in the tech community. We're growing. AI is changing everything. We have to be looking at what changes are taking place in Austin and in Texas. We can't sit on the sidelines and wait for Houston or Dallas to say, we're going to do this. Come along, Austin. We have a long history of a tech thing, as do Dallas and Houston, but we're the one who gets all the attention and certainly all of the growth the last 3 decades. How do we market going forward? If you don't have a plan, then everybody's just going different direction. We need to partner with the people across the state of Texas. We all need to step up and realize that nobody can own it. Nobody can be the center of it. We have 4 of the largest cities in America between Dallas, Houston, Austin's now 10th, and San Antonio. If we're going to forge the future, then Texas needs to come together, and that's one of the things I'm trying to do. We are educating the future. What starts here impacts the world. We are here. We are a force to be reckoned with.
Go big or go home. That's what we say in Texas. Welcome to Forging the Future, and I'm here at South by Southwest today, and I have as a guest Thom Singer, the CEO of the Austin Technology Council. Thanks for coming on, Thom.
Chris, thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is exciting. All right, Thom, so how are you forging the future with the Austin Technology Council?
Things are changing drastically in the tech community. We're growing. AI is changing everything, all these things. So we need to bring people together. I want to have industry think tanks of smart people who are willing to put their ego at the door, their agenda at the door, and come sit down at tables and talk. And then the second thing is, Austin, because of our position of the last 10 years, we need to help lead in this Texas triangle idea. We can't sit on the sidelines and wait for Houston or Dallas to say, yay, we're going to do this. Come along, Austin. We have a long history of a tech thing, as do Dallas and Houston, but we're the one who gets all the attention and certainly all of the growth the last 3 decades. So we need to partner with the people across the state of Texas. We need to partner with our city governments. Many of the growth-oriented places, their tech councils are funded by their cities. We're not. We need to get our city governments and our state government involved. When Ohio won the Intel plant, it wasn't just Columbus. Columbus came in with the rest of the state. They came in with Cincinnati, they came in with Cleveland, and they came in with their state government. Nobody can be the center of it. You know, Austin has the longest standing heavy growth tech center, but we can't say we are the king, you know, you guys are secondary. We have to all come to the table and say, if we are this Texas triangle, if Texas is this force for the future. And if you think about Texas, we have 4 of the 11 largest cities in America between Dallas, Houston, Austin's now 10th, and San Antonio. We have 4 major of the top 10 or 12 cities, you know, in that size, which means we are a force to be reckoned with. If you look at the number of public companies who have headquarters in Austin, San Antonio, Dallas, and Houston, I think we might be number 1. And if not, we're certainly right up there in the top of states that have, you know, those public companies represented with their headquarters.
So is that a government initiative or is it a something that, you know, founders and other investors decided to get together and do?
So the Austin Technology Council was founded 32 years ago.
Wow.
So it was founded out of the University of Texas and IC Squared and the Austin Technology Incubator. It was a brainchild of Dr. George Kosmeski, who is, I mean, not even arguably, he is the godfather of the technology scene in Austin. And the idea was, you know, to have that for many reasons. But my favorite one is it was founded to help put technology on the map as a future economic driver of the city of Austin. And I always joke that, well, check, I think everybody, we don't have to put that on the map. Everybody knows that Austin is a tech hub and an innovation center, but we also were founded to bring the community together.
So those founders that came together way back when, were those like the CEOs we'd know today, or were they small companies? Was it the Michael Dells of the world, or who was it?
Originally, it was a combination of everybody, right? Dell was a huge supporter of the launching of the Austin Technology Council. Of course, George Kosmeski was Michael Dell's mentor, so there was connections to that. A lot of the larger companies really did support it. We had the blessing of the Chamber of Commerce when we started. We had everybody sort of coming together, but it was mainly a lot of small software companies who came together and said, how do we do this?
I'll have to look and see what Houston has going on for that.
So we don't have a member of Techna in the rest of the state of Texas.
Really?
So there's other groups that are out there, but we would like to work more as a Texas entity to promote, instead of Austin competing with Houston and Dallas, Austin Technology Council would like to see Texas work together as, you know, the technology hub, the innovation center of the future.
Yeah, I think that's something we're both interested in, is collaboration. right? And the Texas Triangle people talk about, right? Houston, Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, plus Round Rock and other places in between.
Even Bryan College Station is emerging, yeah.
College Station as well. And it is a force, right? But it does require, I think, some initiative to collaborate between the different entities. So how would you see that, enabling that?
Well, I think, my personal motto is that community, collaboration, and conversations can solve all problems. So I think we need to, number one, look at ourselves as a community, not four separate communities if you just look at the big cities. And then we need to commit to collaborating. I mean, people have to put egos and agendas aside if you're going to collaborate. And then we need to be having the conversations of what does Texas look like and how do we market going forward? And I think that's really key is if you don't have a plan, you're not going to execute on everything on the plan. But if you don't have a plan, then everybody's just going different directions. So I think that's really, really important.
I think a lot of people think this stuff happens just organically, and there's always some of that happening. But 32 years ago, I think the tech scene in Austin looked a lot different, right?
Everything in Austin looked very different.
So, do you think that played a key role in Austin becoming a tech center?
Oh, for sure. And I speak on this history of Austin tech because so many people moved here in the last 10 and 15 years that they don't know where it all began. And so I've created sort of the 10 pillars of Austin. And this wasn't a cookbook. This wasn't a plan. This is a retrospective look at why Austin, what was the perfect storm of things that came together. And I'm not going to go through the whole 10, but a couple of them are obviously the University of Texas and Dr. George Kosmetsky. If they had not done the work they did in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s to bring MCC here, Cimatech here, to found IC Squared, to really promote the community, you wouldn't have had the spark that started it all. Another pillar that sort of did that was we had a community of entrepreneurs who really came together. They were willing to work together. They wanted to work together. They didn't believe in silos. There was Austin. I think some of that changes as you get larger. Another pillar was affordability. I think that's, that pillar's probably leaving pretty quickly. And then another one, since we're here at South by Southwest, another pillar of why Austin boomed and exploded was South by Southwest. If you look back to when Austin really became Austin, like the cool place that everybody talked about, that's in the, early 2000s. And that mirrors up with the explosion and growth of South by Southwest Interactive and really putting the focus of the world of technology on Austin. And we have a highly educated workforce, right? I mean, if you look at the university system and the private colleges that are in Texas, we have an amazing amount of young people graduating within the Texas borders who are graduating with degrees from places like, University of Houston, Texas A&M, SMU, UT Dallas, and of course the University of Texas at Austin. I mean, we are educating the future. The University of Texas of Austin has a motto that I wish we could all steal in Austin and for the whole state. And that is what starts here impacts the world. And they've trademarked it. We can't all steal it.
I like that.
But we can say it, right? I mean, what starts in Texas impacts the world.
Well, if I'm a founder and we keep talking about, we know about the Texas Triangle, but I mean, why is it exploding? What's happening in Texas here that a founder would be interested in coming here and building a startup?
Sure. Well, I mean, Texas is a pro-business state. Let's face it. We're continuously getting more and more people from California and New York. Now, there's parts of living in Texas that maybe a lot of us don't agree with. Certainly, there's some laws that have been passed in the last couple of years. I tell everybody, I don't care what your politics are. Sometimes we have to set our personal politics aside for what is the good of the region and the state. But the whole changing of Roe versus Wade with the Supreme Court, that's not just an abortion issue. In Texas, that's an economic development issue because if people don't feel safe and seen and included in Texas, some of them won't come. And so we need to work to make sure that we're an inclusive state that understands that people are going to have different viewpoints. But if we're working together to grow the economy, we can put some of those things aside. So, I mean, that's just one example. But Texas is traditionally, going back to your question, a pro-business state. Also, Texas, we didn't just start this. This didn't just start with Austin getting popular in the 90s and, we're a cool tech place. The vibe of Texans, I mean, this goes back to the Wildcatters, right? The Howard Hughes Sr. and then the people who were out in West Texas who were drilling holes in the ground. Those people, they had a swagger. They had an entrepreneurship. They were risk takers. If you look at America going to the moon, much of it took place at NASA. It all took place in Houston. The people who were willing to move there and try things, they had the right stuff, as they say, but they were risk takers. And Texas has always been a place where risk takers could come, take risks, and thrive.
Go big or go home. That's what we say in Texas. Yeah, I think it's an interesting dichotomy there with how I think sometimes how Texas is perceived outside, but then inside, I mean, you look at Houston and Texas in general, one of the most diverse cities in the United States, if not the most diverse.
Absolutely.
And so there is the diversity there, and 90 consulates in Houston, I think #1 for foreign business. I mean, there's a lot that's going on here in Texas, outside of, some of those, recent laws. But I agree with you. We need to look at some of the economic impact of those decisions. Do you see foreign businesses coming to Texas? Is there a gateway for that?
Oh my gosh, I am called by delegations from around the world to join Opportunity Austin and the Greater Austin Chamber of Commerce in meetings. Companies are looking to open up a U.S. headquarters. They are looking very closely at Texas in general. They're looking very closely at Austin. So that is extremely common. They're also looking to recruit Texas companies to open up their foreign places in places like Brazil and Ireland and Singapore. They want, if you're going to go to those regions of the country, there's a lot of places that are really working hard. They're coming in and supporting the local tech communities to get their name out there, get their region known. I met with, a whole group of people from the Middle East a few months ago that they are really looking to expand here and let U.S. companies expand. They help U.S. companies expand there. So I think it's huge, right? It's happening across the board. But you're right. The perception of Texas is sometimes positive, sometimes negative or indifferent, but it's not always an understanding of what a diverse state we are, both in population, in demographics, but also in what each city looks like. Our demographics physically of Austin and the Hill Country is very different than Houston being right there, on the Gulf, and very different than Dallas. But if you look at it, when IBM did their research to create the Watson project, many of their researchers, if not, the whole focus of the program took place in Austin. So we've been an AI town before there was such a thing as an AI town. But we also see more manufacturing coming to town, more hardware products being designed here in the health tech area and in the fitness area. Things like that are growing out of here that then get manufactured into wearables, things like that. And then, of course, the semiconductor industry, it never really left. Production left, the fabs went overseas, but we had all the fabless design. Design still was taking place here with Silicon Labs and so many others. There's definitely a big movement of manufacturing coming to Austin, probably more so than at any time in the history of Austin. There's going to be more tech manufacturing taking place here.
So how do we foster the collaboration and communication between the different cities? And I agree with you. It's not Houston versus Austin versus Dallas, although there's always a little bit of rivalry there.
Sure.
But how do we combine, the effort?
So it's our job to celebrate the past and be able to educate people about how did Austin get here. The second thing is that we need to be present in the now. You can't live with one foot in the past and one foot in the future because you miss what's going on around you. So we have to be present in the now, and then we have to plan for the future. So we're looking for those, local entrepreneurs or people who are moving here who want to have their voice and how do we shape the future. The Austin Technology Council is trying to work with every other tech nonprofit in town, be it Austin Women in Technology, the Chamber of Commerce, Opportunity Austin, ACG, the Austin Venture Association. I mean, the list is extremely long. If they want to play as the rising tide will raise all ships, we'll promote their events. We'll talk about them. We'll have them on our podcast. We'll do these things because our role is to be the thread that supports everything and runs through everything in tech. Because sometimes we're going to have to pull on that thread, bring the community together. That could be for an event like our Austin Tech Hall of Fame that's coming up in June. That could be for a lobbying or a policy issue. That could be to get out the vote, which I think is very important for the tech community to have their voice. The tech community is a major force in Austin and in Texas. And yet the amount of people who work for our tech companies who get out and vote is not nearly high enough. So we need to, be doing that. And that's part of our cause.
It'd be interesting to be tracking that percentage somehow, but yeah.
There are people who do research on that. And I've heard little anecdotes about it, that it's not nearly where it should be, that if the people who worked in and around tech all went to the polls, it would change the face of a lot of things in the state.
Interesting. Well, speaking of tech, I mean, you've been an entrepreneur yourself as well, right?
So I had my own business. I still have my own business. I started it about 2005. I went full-time with it in 2009 as a professional speaker and a corporate trainer, teaching people how do you get your team to collaborate and build trust with each other, and how do you get your team to engage in whatever your community is. Your community could be Austin, could be Houston, or it could be healthcare, or it could be oil and gas. But your network, I think, is your secret weapon. The people you meet, there's nothing after you're out of college that will happen in your life that will impact you as much as the people you meet and build real, mutually beneficial relationships with. So I call those uncommon connections, because a common connection is just a like, link, share, and follow. I mean, connecting to someone on LinkedIn means nothing if you don't really build some sort of an understanding. And so I spent years teaching inside companies, inside law firms and accounting firms, and then speaking for like annual events for nonprofits, for associations all over the world. And as you can imagine, the pandemic, if you made your money getting on a plane, giving a speech and getting a check, you couldn't get on a plane, you couldn't give a speech, and nobody could give you a check. So
the world changed.
The world changed. It's come back, and I still travel and do a lot of that speaking. I also speak a lot now as CEO of the Austin Technology Council. I'm speaking in Austin and then around the state, and there's been some nibbles about coming into other communities outside of Texas to tell that history of Austin.
Well, that's an important point. One thing that came up in the panel that I moderated this morning here at South by was just the secret of scaling a company. One of the secrets is networking.
Sure.
And you have tech entrepreneurs. They tend to be introverts.
Yep.
A lot of entrepreneurs are introvert. I would put myself in that category. You kind of have to get past it. But the secret is that it's not just about building your product or your tech. It's about your network.
Yeah, for sure.
Forming that network and bringing in advisors and bringing in, and attracting global advisors with a global mindset. If you want to actually build a business that's going to scale in a significant way, and that's something I think also that Texas has, is a very global mindset.
If they live in Austin, they should get involved with the Austin Technology Council and help us shape and lead where we're going into our next phase and generation.
Get involved.
Get involved with something. There are more nonprofits in your sector or in your region or in Houston or Dallas, and they need your help. They need leadership. And if the leaders are all saying, well, I'm going to hang out privately with the other leaders, then those organizations don't get to change and grow. So number one, I have a board member who is, mid-30s, has about 70 employees, very successful, growing company. People are trying to buy him. And I met him, told him what I was doing with this reinvention. He came back, joined, gave me some money to support some things. And then he joined the board, which there was some board dues involved. And he's been the best board member someone could ever dream of. And he's a young tech guy, second generation Austin Tech. And I asked him, why, right? I want more of you. I want more of these young leaders who have tech companies. Why did you do this? Why did you financially and with your time support the cause of ATC? And he looked at me and he goes, Tom, I'm an engineer. Do you know what real engineers do? We fix things or we build things. And he goes, you wanted to fix and rebuild this organization. That's exciting. So I tell all leaders, what leaders do is they lead. So if you see yourself as a leader now or in the future, you got to get out there and lead. And you can't lead from the back. You really can't lead from too far out in the front. You got to show up once in a while so people know who you are and they get to find out your soul. If people don't know your soul, they're not going to trust you. And trust, I'm certified to train for an organization called the Trust Edge Leadership Institute, 20 years worth of research around trust in business. And when I go into companies and do this training, I say that trust is the real currency and it's the foundation of relationships. And relationships, all opportunities come from people.
It's so important, and that's why trust is one of SoftTech's 5 values, because that's how you get business and how you have to build trust first. You have to give back first. You have to establish that trust. So they'll come in and bring you in, and they trust you with their job, basically, right? They don't want to get fired, right? And your job is to help them get promoted. And
we see that in communities, right? With these community organizations. Some community organizations come and go. They come, they start the whole thing, but then they overcharge for their sponsorships. And the sponsors are like, well, that wasn't worth it. So they don't come back. Or they promise things they can't deliver. Oh, we're going to expose you to all these people, and they never meet anybody. I'm super honest about what the Austin Technology Council is today and what we're trying to make it. I don't ever overpromise. I lowered the prices of all of our sponsorships so that people and companies could come in and say, wow, I've got a value. My repeat sponsorship level is really strong. And those companies, the banks, the law firms, the accounting firms, the consulting firms, they come back. They want to sponsor the next thing because we're trying to create that value. But if they don't trust me, then I lose my sponsors. And if I lose my sponsors, I can't make payroll and I don't have an organization.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, we didn't have examples. There weren't a lot of successful, homegrown software companies in the area. We had a history of hardware and semiconductors, but we really didn't have that software piece that became so key to our growth.
And software was the original focus of the council, right?
We were called the Austin Software Council. In fact, my check still comes from ACS Inc. is the organization's official name, but we do business now as the Austin Technology Council.
That makes sense. Is there more hard tech happening in Austin now? I mean, certainly Dell was all hard tech for the most part. They've got more now, but
yes, I mean, Austin right now, the one thing that's changed the most over 30 years or whatever is we don't just have one or two verticals. Everything is happening in Austin, right? So you certainly have that software piece. We have a long history of gaming here in Austin. Certainly AI, and of course, everybody right now, that's the hot buzzword, right? Everybody's an AI town. But if you look at it, when IBM did their research to create the Watson project, many of their researchers, if not, the whole focus of the program much of it took place in Austin. So we've been an AI town before there was such a thing as an AI town. But we also see more manufacturing coming to town, more hardware products being designed here in the health tech area and in the fitness area. Things like that are growing out of here that then get manufactured into tech like watch type wearables, things like that. And then of course the semiconductor industry, it never really left. Production left, the fabs went overseas, but we had all the fabless design. Design still was taking place here with Silicon Labs and so many others, and now the fabs are coming back, and there's going to be an explosion, hopefully, of those types of jobs over the next decade here in Austin.
So do you see the fabs coming here to Texas like Tesla came here for manufacturing?
Yep. Yeah, there's definitely a big movement of manufacturing coming to Austin, probably more so than at any time in the history of Austin. There's going to be more tech manufacturing taking place here.
Well, speaking of tech, I mean, you've been an entrepreneur yourself as well, right?
So I had my own business. I still have my own business. I started it in about 2005. I went full-time with it in 2009 as a professional speaker and a corporate trainer, teaching people how do you get your team to collaborate and build trust with each other, and how do you get your team to engage in whatever your community is. Your community could be Austin, could be Houston, or it could be healthcare, or it could be oil and gas. But your network, I think, is your secret weapon. The people you meet, there's nothing after you're out of college that will happen in your life that will impact you as much as the people you meet and build real, mutually beneficial relationships with. So I call those uncommon connections, because a common connection is just a like, link, share, and follow. I mean, connecting to someone on LinkedIn means nothing if you don't really build some sort of an understanding. And so I spent years teaching inside companies, inside law firms and accounting firms, and then speaking for annual events for nonprofits, for associations all over the world. And as you can imagine, the pandemic, if you made your money getting on a plane, giving a speech and getting a check, you couldn't get on a plane, you couldn't give a speech, and nobody could give you a check. So
the world changed.
The world changed. It's come back, and I still travel and do a lot of that speaking. I also speak a lot now as CEO of the Austin Technology Council. I'm speaking in Austin and then around the state, and there's been some nibbles about coming into other communities outside of Texas to tell that history of Austin.
Well, that's an important point. One thing that came up in the panel that I moderated this morning here at South by was just the secret of scaling a company. One of the secrets is networking.
Sure.
And you have tech entrepreneurs. They tend to be introverts.
Yep.
A lot of entrepreneurs are introvert. I would put myself in that category. You kind of have to get past it. But the secret is that it's not just about building your product or your tech. It's about your network.
Yeah, for sure.
Forming that network and bringing in advisors and bringing in, and attracting global advisors with a global mindset if you want to actually build a business that's going to scale in a significant way. And that's something I think also that Texas has, is a very global mindset.
But that networking piece, society has changed a little bit before the pandemic, right? Yeah. We got all of this social media, and social media was supposed to bring us closer together. Yeah. I would argue I don't think it has done that. It might have done the opposite. But people have gotten looking for shortcuts in building relationships. And the truth is, you can't build a relationships. Meeting someone once does not make them part of your network. Do you know what meeting someone once makes them?
No.
It makes them someone you've met once. And there's a huge difference between someone you've met once and someone who you've built a huge connection with and a long-term mutually beneficial relationship. So I speak a lot to young professionals groups, and I tell them, if you're under 30, smartest thing you can do is invest a lot of time connecting with people your own age and really building friendships with them in your industry and in industries that are adjacent to your industry. I have this job running the Austin Technology Council because I used to be the marketing director for the biggest tech law firm in Austin back in the 90s and early 2000s, then for a major bank, and then for a major consulting firm here that all sold to tech. So I went to all the tech events. I was a business development salesperson, and I built a really strong network. Well, when I left and turned that into a teaching and speaking career, I didn't do a lot in Austin. I mean, I kept my foot in it, but I wasn't there for a decade. And when they were looking for someone to rebuild, it was the people who knew me 10 years ago who put my name into the running with HEC to take on this job. And I was looking for a job because the speaking business was temporarily paused, and it all came together. And my daughter said, "Oh my gosh, what you teach is true." You know, they can't take your network away from you. If someone likes you, believes in you, and thinks that you have a potential, they won't forget that when you pop back up 5 years or 10 years later. So the networking piece is really important, but we live in a world where everybody wants shortcuts. We also live in a world where a lot of these entrepreneurs, especially once they get a little success and they get funded, they start only hanging out with other successful funded entrepreneurs. And that's great. There's a time for a private curated dinner. And VC firms do this a lot, and not nefariously. They do it to bring their portfolio together so they can meet. But I talk to people all the time who go, "Oh, well, that's all I do." Well, if you're not in the community, you can't become a civic-minded leader if you're not going to a chamber event or an Austin Technology Council event or whatever it is. If you're going to lead, you can't lead from an ivory tower.
Or an echo chamber. What's next?
Well, I think I might have said this before, but if not, the Austin Technology Council's goal is to celebrate the past, be present in the now, and plan for the future. So we have to be present in the now. We have to be looking at what changes are taking place in Austin and in Texas. And we are at a pivotal time. And Texas needs to get together and do that. And that's my personal goal. Like I said, my personal motto: community, collaboration, and conversations will solve all problems. I'll tell everybody that 10 times a day. And eventually I want all of our cities and our state government to be behind the effort of how do we make Austin. We're not going to be the next Silicon Valley. We don't want to be the next Silicon Valley. Texas doesn't want to be California for lots of reasons. However, if we're going to lead the technology of the future, if we're going to forge the future, then Texas needs to come together. And that's one of the things I'm trying to do.
All right, Thom, thanks for coming on. I'm inspired by what you're doing. I'm ready to help with Houston. I have some socks for you. This is one of my things. I got my shuttle socks on. You've got Texas socks on. Maybe you have these, maybe you don't.
Don't mess with Texas
you
socks.
Need to have those.
These are freaking awesome, but I do wear these every time I speak anywhere else in the country or the world.
Go Texas.
I wear my Texas socks.
Well, thanks for being on the show, Thom.
Thank you.